Hey everybody, Economic Ninja here. I want to talk about an event that's happening in your life that within the next 10 years, you're not going to care how much debt you have because it's going to virtually disappear. I know it sounds crazy, but it is actually going to happen. And I'm going to use a real life story from my father to explain how amazing this phenomenon is. It happens every 20 to 30 years. But what's important is that I'm also going to tell you about a very small time in this 10 years that you're going to go through that's going to create a ton of pain in your life. And if you don't understand it, you're going to be a part of it. If you do understand how I explain this story and this phenomenon that happens in finance all throughout the world every 20 to 30 years, you're going to crush it. All right, let's go back to 1980. My father purchased his first house for $26,000. It was a tract home, Southern California. He was making $18,000 a year working as an officer. He was making almost as much as the house was worth that year. Of course, there's taxes, insurance, food to put on the table, cars, all kinds of other stuff with it. But just stick with me here. In the year 2000, he retired. His wages had went up over 5 times. He retired around $100,000 a year with his, overtime that he'd pick up throughout the year, things like that. But that's about how much he was making. It was phenomenal. The house at that time was worth about $200,000. It had went up, well, just around numbers, 8 times. 8 times. When he bought the house in 1980, he had an interest rate, a mortgage rate of about, I want to say it was 14%. But over the years, that rate had changed because fluctuations of interest rates went up and down, but really compared to that time, it only went down because that was one of the highest times. You see, in the 1970s, there was a problem with the United States and Iran. Stick with me. Oil prices exploded. There were gas shortages. People were having in the 70s to fill up their cars. They were commanded to only fill up their cars on certain days of the week based off of the number on their license plate. It was wild. And that led to a massive wave of inflation around the nation. And it forced the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates incrementally year after year for about 3 or 4 years until they finally peaked around 18%. Mortgage rates were around 14. It was crazy. Ironically, this is the year my father bought the house. Now, again, I told you his wages had went up so much and the house had went up a lot in that 30 years. But he was able to benefit because what happened is as he refied down, the payment became so small. It was pretty much nothing by the time he retired. Now, the truth is my father actually paid the house off in the early 90s because he was smart and he didn't keep refinancing that 30-year into a new 30-year. He would refinance it into a shorter term loan and he would take constantly the same amount he would pay and he'd put it down on the house, rapidly paying it off. But most people don't do this. Now, this is the part of the pain that you need to listen to, and this is the part that's very important. You see, in the 1980s, my father had a job as a police officer, a job with the government that was somewhat secure, because he was working in the public sector in a job that was needed because during that time, people were actually losing homes. You see, people in the 70s that had not adjustable rates, but like they didn't plan their finances properly. They were hurting, and as interest rates went up, they found themselves in a sort of a doom loop. They were losing their homes in the 80s. People were losing their jobs. And so he was very fortunate. He was a fortunate one that had a solid job and was able to take advantage of that market and that interest rate. You see, because the price of the home that I didn't tell you, the $26,000 it cost years earlier with lower interest rates would have sold for more. But the price, the low price that he was able to get that day was dictated on the cost of the money it took to buy that house. Remember, 14% mortgage. And what happened is the only reason the home went up year after year, decade after decade, was because interest rates went down. Other people around got greedy. They wanted their money could buy more, so they did buy more and they bid up the price of those homes. You see, the pain point is what's about to happen in your life. as we are going through the exact same scenario, an inflation wave that is now turning into a fuel and oil crisis, a war with Iran, and then a subsequent crash, a tanking of the markets, because the Federal Reserve is going to be forced to raise rates like they did just the first wave 3 years ago to combat the high price of lumber during COVID, to combat the high price of vehicles, try and cool down the economy. This time is going to be no different. It's going to be spectacular. And the pain point is coming if you are still heavily in debt and you're not in fixed rate mortgages, you're in adjustable, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. There are a lot of people still with adjustable rate mortgages that are going to adjust much higher, and you're going to lose your home. Only for someone else to come in with a more secure job. And we didn't have AI back in the 80s and then 70s. That's taken jobs. So you need to position yourself right now. So you get yourself from adjustable rate into fixed rate. You don't get into any more debt. You sit back. This is a multi-year cycle. And I guarantee you, even though I don't want to wait a couple of years, Ninja, you think you're going to be bummed 10 years from now when we finish this cycle and you're on the other side of it, picking up assets super cheap because interest rates are super high? Yeah, you're going to be stoked. A couple of years are going to look like a blip on your radar of life. But the fact of the matter is your radar pattern is going to go from this to this, and that is going to cause you to crush it. Hey, everyone that's been subscribing to this channel, thank you so much. You are awesome. Love you. Thank you for sharing these videos. The Economic Ninja is out.